Hello everybody, it is Rosanna here. I hope you're well. I'm just finished day one of a Sensory Babies training course, which I feel so privileged to be a part of, because this is really talking about the effect of sensory development from our time in conception through pregnancy, and also the effect of trauma if we were actually born prematurely and we spent lots of time in an incubator. We didn't have the sense of touch, we didn't have, hello everybody who's joining, we didn't have the sensory, not deprivation, but the opposite of that. We didn't actually get what we needed in terms of touch, in terms of communication and everything else to actually support us. But you know, there are many people who were born prematurely, and certainly for those of you who don't know, that I work with fertility issues, particularly with those who have a really difficult time getting pregnant. And what I find more than anything is that trauma, that the women that have trouble having babies tend to have birth trauma themselves or issues with their own mother line. And what's very interesting that a lot of people don't know about is that we carry trauma in our cellular memory from one generation to the next. There's been some very interesting studies done on the Holocaust and how those who were affected by the Holocaust and survived, basically the descendants from them have a different stress response in their bodies to those who didn't actually experience trauma from the time of the Holocaust. And we know that this can affect mental health, depression, anxiety, food issues. We know through the Dutch famine that depending on whether a woman was pregnant in her first, second or third trimester, that would then predispose the babies born either towards eating disorders or being able to regulate their weight. So whether we're dealing with obesity, anorexia, bulimia. But I have talked for a long time about the fact that I believe that we are all suffering from World War post-traumatic stress, whether we were in the Holocaust, whether we were, our ancestors were actually involved in the Holocaust, or whether they were involved in the war, whether they were a woman left at home, or a husband went away and either got killed or didn't come back for many years, whether we were children that were evacuated from our homes and sent out to safer places. We have got a lot of trauma in our cellular memory, and we are living in a world where the norm is fight, flight, freeze. It's the sympathetic nervous system. And actually, I feel it is so important that we address these issues before we even think about having babies, because often in our pregnancy yoga classes, we will find women will come who are frightened of giving birth. Now, again, I'm no scientist, but through the lots and lots of training that I've done, from everything from womb surround work, rebirthing, time, looking at early development and how even our time from conception onwards, those first 1,001 days, the government talks about them because they know the early years are so important in how our personalities, our ability to deal with life, the normal stresses of life are affected. And we know that if an animal is traumatized early in life, like a puppy or a kitten, then they're traumatized for life. But we don't recognize the impact of how we handle pregnancy, how we handle birth, how we handle the immediate postpartum period, and actually how that affects us and how we develop our emotional intelligence, our ability to bond, our ability to form a sense of self-worth and value in the world. Like it's so important. What I've learned today in 18 years of basically being a specialist in pregnancy, babies, fertility, I'm learning new stuff about the fact that we are sensory beings and we really need to be able to have interaction that is healthy from the start. So think about even conceiving, trying to have a baby where you take out of making love the joy of making love, and it's like, oh, time now, I'm fertile, let's go and have sex and let's do the do. And we're actually creating babies with a lack of love. We're creating babies in a space where we're just doing the biomechanical work and hoping it will work. Now, obviously, there are many women that do need to turn to assisted fertility methods and their partners, and we are quite a sick society today in the sense that if we're not naturally getting pregnant, we need to ask why. How much of that is physical, how much of that is emotional, how much of that is psychological. And the way that I work with my clients is it's all of it, and we need to look at all of it systematically. There will be blocks. Wherever we meet resistance, there are blocks. And usually, you know, asking someone, you know, what is your relationship with your mother like? How intimate was your relationship with your mother? Was there any trauma? What happened at your birth? How was your pregnancy? All these things are things we don't really think about when we go and we say, I've been trying for 2 years, I'm not getting pregnant, what do I do, doctor? And then we start looking at ways that we can get pregnant without engaging the emotional and the psychological aspects of our being, the spiritual aspect of our being. The American Indians, I'm quoting quotes, so forgive me if I've got this wrong, but it is said that in the indigenous American Indian cultures, you will look at the decisions you make as a tribe and how they are going to affect the next 7 generations. And we are now post Second World War, 4th or 5th generation, and we have never ever looked at healing the trauma. We have smoked, we have drinked, we have eaten, we have shopped, we have worked our way through avoiding the pain that is within our cellular memory. And I don't think it's any accident that it's getting harder and harder for a lot of people to be having babies, because the stress response is reinforced from one generation to the next. It becomes the norm. The homeostasis of the nervous system, the whole body, is one where we're in a constant state of alert rather than rest and repair, feed and breed. So I'm going to put more together as I kind of digest this course, but I think it's really important for us to recognize that from before we even conceive, it is important to look at what trauma we haven't dealt with in our lives. And when I say trauma, I just mean unprocessed emotions, unprocessed awareness of things that are within us that we prefer to avoid. In labour, we say the only way out is through. When you're dealing with contractions, the only way out is through. And you can either avoid it, push it away, resist it, make it much harder for yourself, or you can learn tools, coping tools, to be able to work through, to meet your resistance with love and compassion, and to deal with everything one step at a time. And I think for most people, if they're looking at what's under the rug and they actually want to see everything that they've been hiding, they need some support to do that. And that is what I do, is I hold your hand to help you feel safe to look into the places that are difficult to look at. Sometimes I've had to work with clients for a good year before they've actually fallen pregnant. I don't like the word fallen pregnant, before they have conceived with ease or they've conceived and grown a baby to term and birthed it. And for me, that is really precious time, because you might be able to get someone pregnant ahead of time, but if they haven't processed the stuff that is there, then they're passing it to the next generation to process. And I've definitely seen that with my own daughter. I know I took on what my family hadn't processed. My great-grandfather was beheaded. Anytime I talk to any of my older family members, they all laugh about it. They joke it. It becomes a joke. It's a laughing matter. It's something that isn't really addressed. It is too much to think. But my grandmother was in my great-grandmother's womb when my great-grandmother was fleeing for her life with her toddler son. Her toddler son died of cancer. He smoked himself to death, basically, at the age of 40. So we find these different coping mechanisms to deal with our pain. But we have got to the point now that if we don't actually deal with it, we are going to be annihilating the human race. It's coming to a point where those who choose to are doing the inner work, and they are coming to a place where they feel safe to grow babies in this world, where they feel there is hope in this world to shift from a sort of dog-eat-dog or human-eat-human kind of approach to one where we can find amazing solutions that look after the planet, look after all sentient beings on this planet, including the human beings. But we are also, many of us, on autopilot, just doing what we feel should be done. And that is where one block is coming after another. You can't actually just will your way into this without doing the inner work. And that is what is so important to take on, is our babies, the future generations. They deserve us to be as well as we can be, as healthy as we can be. They deserve us to review our lives, our relationship with our partners, our relationship with our parents, our relationship with ourselves, and to make sure we are as healthy, as well-rounded, as holistically whole as we can be, because otherwise we're just creating more damage. And I feel it really is my role as someone who works with fertility issues and clients to support them to get very clear on why they want to have babies. And I'm not so into the idea that I'm here to just help everybody get pregnant. I feel that if you have a desire to have a baby or to become a parent, then getting clear on what that desire is, where it's coming from. Is it an unmet need? Is it the biological clock, or is it your sole purpose? Is it your sole desire to actually have a baby? And if so, you know, if for some reason the physiology is so damaged in your being because of what you inherited that you are not able to have a baby, it's preparing the space to be able to actually foster or adopt, or egg donation or sperm donation or whatever needs to come in. So this isn't about being anti the fertility methods that are available, the assisted fertility methods. It's just about bringing consciousness into why people actually can't have babies, and to stop making it about statistics, to stop making it about age, because it's not about that. It's about vitality. It's about well-being. It's about health and happiness. It's about the fact that so many of us are not in very healthy relationships, and we think bringing a baby into the world is somehow going to make that better. I've been a single mum since my daughter was 10 months old, and I know the impact that's had on her, and I know how it's made it very challenging for me to have intimate relationships with others, the fear of being in situations where I can't escape from them. These are my own wounds that I inherited, that I hadn't processed before I had my own child. Now, hindsight's a great teacher, but prevention is better than cure. And I'm just inviting everybody who watches this to have a little think about, if you are wanting to have a baby, why you want to have a baby, and what might be blocking you from actually conceiving. Because some of my clients are terrified of being sick, and you know, they've got to go through potential nausea and being sick in the months of pregnancy. Others are terrified of the pain of labour. Others are terrified of how their body's going to change. Others are really scared about what's going to happen in terms of their relationship, and whether it will put the kind of strain in the relationship that's too much. We need to bring all this stuff out and love it up, and in so doing, we are then able to feel we're worthy of what we want. We're then able to feel we are deserving of what we want, and actually we're capable of it. Because whilst you're in a state of denial, you are in a state of blockage. You can't, you know, your body responds by the blood not being in your visceral organs. It's in your extremities, ready to fight, flight, freeze. Until you actually start to make your inside world a safe place, why would you want to house a baby in it? It's a real question I have for you. You know, if you feel your womb as a traitor is letting you down, why would you want to house a baby in there? We need to clear that womb toxicity. We need to bring love and beauty into our beings. We need to feel we are safe in ourselves before we bring another life into the world. And so often people haven't even stopped to think this, and I think it's so important, because the way we develop in the womb is very much dependent on the emotional, psychological and physiological state of the mother, how she perceives her environment, whether it's a threatening world that she's living in and she has to fight to survive, or whether she feels well supported and nourished and held. You know, in Birthright Yoga we nurture the mother so she learns to nurture the baby, and self-nurture is so important, and it's so lacking. When I look now at the effects of that time in the womb and those early months afterwards, the first 2 years of life, first 3 years of life, first 7 years of life, and how they shape us for life. Everything from whether we use a dummy, whether we practice control crying, whether we co-sleep with our babies, whether we breastfeed or we bottle feed, it all has an impact, and it has an impact that no one is talking about. And it's time to talk about it. So for me, I'm here as an ambassador for the babies, and I'm here to support those who want to have babies, to raise their consciousness and their vibration to the point where they can actually have what they want. And our hearts are open. You know, there's people in this course at the moment who work for adoption agencies, and it just blows me away that they're here learning about how to support a child to move out of the early trauma they experience through abandonment, through not being kept by their parents for whatever reason, whatever they experienced in the womb, to then match that baby and that baby's needs, or that child's needs, with the appropriate parents, and to help the parents understand how they can support this child to actually move out of a traumatized state of being into one where they feel safe in the world. Everything can be overcome with love, with intention, with patience, with compassion, with care. When we hear about neuroplasticity, when we hear about nervous system set for life, when we hear about things that seem like we can't get out of it, but actually, and there is only one way, that you're going to be traumatized and that's it. It's not entirely like that. We can do repair work. we can do repair work at many different interjection stages along our lifetimes. You know, my daughter's nearly 17. It's possible to be working with someone, especially if they have some kind of mental health issue. The neuroplasticity continues into their 20s, and we continue to have neuroplasticity, which is the ability to mould our perception of the world, to adapt to our environment, to see the world differently through the right kind of support. It's so important that we're doing that, and it's so amazing that I'm in a room full of occupational therapists and language therapists and neonatal unit nurses and all sorts of things in there, women and men in there that are doing amazing work in helping other professionals and parents understand what they can actually do to help the trauma that is there already to be healed, to be released, to be repatterned. But why don't we prevent it in the first place by actually doing the work before we even think about having a baby? I like to work with people a year before they're thinking about getting pregnant. That's how much I like to do this work. And when I have been working with really challenging cases, the relationship with the mother is so important, and the relationship with judgment is so important, because those two things basically affect how we see ourselves and what we feel we will become as mothers in the making. I might make another video on this. I'm going to leave it here, and I really value the comments actually. So if you enjoy what I've just said, then please message me if you've got any questions, anything you'd like me to go into in more detail, because I can go off on tangents all the time. But the main message here is that it's really important to do the deep inner work before we conceive, ideally, whether you have some reason to think that you're going to have difficulty getting pregnant or not. We all can do with a physical, emotional and psychological detox before we choose to bring life into this world. And it gives us the confidence then to parent from the heart, and it gives us the confidence then to challenge also the current systems as they stand, because as I said, occupational therapists in there, what most of them are talking about is the fact that although everybody working in neonatal units are well-meaning, everybody working in maternity wards are well-meaning, there are different levels of consciousness and awareness about what is needed and how we interpret research, how we interpret trainings that we go on. And, you know, babies that are in neonatal units, I found out today, are exposed to 14 painful procedures a day. And they are on the feet and the hands and the mouth, which are the most sensitive areas of the body. And this is the beauty of where baby yoga and baby massage and baby swimming can really do a lot of healing. But it's so important to remember that our time early in life really affects our ability to form healthy attachments, our health, and how we actually, well, digestion, our fertility, our digestive health, and the habits that we get into in order to self-soothe. So addictions are a big part of that as well. It's fascinating, fascinating. I'm sure I'll have a video tomorrow for you as well, but I'll leave that there for now. Take care, bye. Thanks, Michael.